The morning of March 7th began like any other for Nina Cole, though later she would say she felt an unusual heaviness in the air as she approached the clinic. The building stood quietly on the corner of Crestwood Avenue, its glass doors reflecting the pale sunrise. It was a place usually filled with soft voices, warm smiles, and the steady comfort of routine. But that morning, something felt off. Maybe it was the unsettling stillness around the entrance, or maybe it was the way the key seemed to resist her hand when she unlocked the door. She couldn't explain it, but she knew something was wrong long before she discovered the truth. As she stepped inside, the familiar scent of eucalyptus and old books filled the lobby. Nina inhaled deeply, expecting it to calm her like it always did, but her nerves didn't settle. She walked past the reception desk and headed down the narrow hallway that led to the therapist offices. Her heels clicked softly against the polished floor, echoing down the corridor. She paused for a moment, listening. Usually she heard the faint hum of early morning traffic outside or the distant rumble of the building's aging heating system. But today, the clinic seemed to be holding its breath. Then Nina noticed something strange. At the far end of the hallway, through the small window of Dr. Elias Warren's office door, she saw light. A bright, steady glow. He always turned the light off before leaving the night before. That was one of his rules. He would tidy his desk, lock his drawer, switch off the lamp, and place his glasses in the exact same spot every night. It was part of his routine, and he followed it with unfailing precision. She moved toward the door, her worry growing with each step. When she reached it, she knocked gently out of habit. Dr. Warren often arrived early, preparing notes or catching up on paperwork. Maybe, she thought, he had simply forgotten to tell her he planned to come in before the clinic opened. But after a moment of silence, she knocked again, louder this time. Still no answer. Her pulse began to race. She turned the doorknob, expecting it to open. It didn't. Locked. She knocked once more, calling his name softly. The only response was the faint buzz of the ceiling light inside. Something was wrong. Nina hurried back down the hall, nearly tripping as she rushed around the corner to find security. She found Samuel, the building's security guard, sipping coffee near the entrance. She explained the situation with breathless urgency, her voice trembling. Samuel frowned deeply, immediately setting his mug aside. He followed her back to the office, and with a concerned look, instructed her to step back. He knocked firmly on the door and spoke Dr. Warren's name with enough authority to be heard clearly through the wooden barrier. Silence answered him. Then, shaking his head, he inserted a master key into the lock, but it didn't turn. It was as if the lock had jammed from the inside. "This shouldn't happen," he muttered, confused. "This key opens everything." He pushed against the door again, calling the doctor's name with growing urgency. When he received no response, he turned to Nina with a grim expression. "Stand back." He threw his weight against the door once, twice, and on the third attempt, the lock gave in with a sharp crack. The door swung inward. The moment it opened, Nina's hand flew to her mouth. The office was eerily still. The warm yellow light from the desk lamp cast long, heavy shadows across the room. The air smelled faintly sweet, though neither of them recognized the scent at the time. Papers were neatly arranged on the desk, just as Dr. Warren always left them. A pen lay parallel to the edge, perfectly aligned. The bookshelf behind him remained organized by subject, just as it had been last night. Everything looked normal at first glance, except for the man sitting in the leather chair. Dr. Elias Warren sat perfectly still, his body slightly slumped but kept upright by the firmness of the seat. His eyes were open, staring forward with a glassy emptiness that made Nina's heart drop instantly. His mouth hung slightly open, as if he had tried to speak but couldn't finish his sentence. His skin had taken on an unnatural pale tone, drained of warmth, and there were no signs of struggle, no overturned furniture, no visible wounds, nothing disturbed, just the horrifying stillness of someone who would never move again. Nina felt the room start to spin. Samuel rushed forward, checking for a pulse he knew he wouldn't find. His voice cracked as he called for emergency services. Nina backed away, her mind refusing to accept what her eyes saw. She remembered the way Dr. Warren greeted her every morning, always warm, always calm. She remembered how he offered her reassuring words whenever she felt overwhelmed. Now he sat in front of her, lifeless and frozen in place. Paramedics arrived quickly, followed by police. They moved with methodical urgency, checking the room inch by inch. But their confusion only grew. There were no defensive wounds on Dr. Warren's body. No bruises. No signs of poisoning visible to the naked eye. Nothing broken. Nothing missing. Well, almost nothing. On the corner of the desk, where Dr. Warren usually kept his small audio recorder, there was an empty slot. The recorder itself was there, but the memory card was gone. Removed carefully. Deliberately. As if someone had wanted to take the one piece of evidence that could explain what had happened in that room. Detective Mara Levin arrived shortly after. She was a sharp, observant woman with a reputation for uncovering truth, even in the most complicated cases. When she stepped into the office, she paused, letting her eyes adjust and absorbing every detail. Something in the room made her frown immediately. The locked door, the undisturbed furniture, the missing recording, the faint sweet scent lingering in the air. All of it painted a picture that made no sense. She asked for the building security footage. Samuel escorted her to the main surveillance room. Nina followed, though she felt as if she were floating outside her own body. The video showed Dr. Warren entering the clinic at 6:01 p.m. the night before. He walked calmly, holding a cup of tea in one hand and his briefcase in the other. He moved with the same relaxed posture he always had. Then at 6:14 p.m., he returned to his office. After that, the hallway remained empty. Not a single soul approached the door until Nina arrived the next morning. No patient, no stranger, no one. But the building's audio security system, which recorded background hallway sounds, captured something that sent shivers down Levin's spine. At exactly 10:14 p.m., a scream erupted from inside the office. Sharp, abrupt, and unmistakably Dr. Warren's voice. After that, silence. Detective Levin played the audio again, slowing it down, amplifying the background noise. But there was nothing else in the recording. No footsteps. No second voice. No sound of the door opening. A man screamed inside a locked room. And then he died. All alone. But Detective Levin didn't believe that for a second. As she stood in the office, staring at the lifeless body of a man who had dedicated his life to helping others, she sensed something deeper unfolding beneath the surface. Something planned. Something personal. Something that didn't end in that room. She looked at the missing memory card slot again. Someone had been with him that night. Someone no camera captured, no witness saw, and no one was supposed to remember. The final session was missing, and the truth was only beginning to show itself. Detective Mara Levin stepped out of the cold morning air and into the quiet hallway of Crestwood Therapy Clinic, her boots clicking softly against the floor. The hallway still felt thick with the fear and confusion left behind by the discovery of Dr. Elias Warren's body. She paused for a moment just inside the door, her sharp eyes scanning the space as if the walls themselves might whisper answers. She had been on the job for more than 13 years, and during that time she had investigated murders in alleyways, abandoned warehouses, and busy streets, but something about a death inside a locked room always unsettled her. A locked room meant secrets. It meant careful planning. It meant a killer confident enough to leave behind no obvious trace. Nina Cole stood near the doorway, arms crossed tightly around herself as though she needed to physically hold herself together. Her eyes were red from crying, though she tried to hide it. When she saw the detective approach, she straightened her posture, trying to look composed. But her voice shook the moment she opened her mouth. "Detective Levin, thank you for coming. I still can't believe this is real." Levin offered a gentle nod. "I'm sorry for your loss. I know Dr. Warren meant a lot to you." She had reviewed Nina's employment records on the way over. Nina had worked at the clinic for 7 years, and had been the doctor's right hand through everything from schedule management to patient emergencies. Whether she admitted it or not, she wasn't just an assistant. She was family. Levin stepped closer to the office door, the same door Samuel had broken down that morning. The wood around the lock was cracked, the metal bent outward. Inside, the room still looked almost untouched except for police markers placed around the desk and chair. The soft glow of the lamp, still on, cast a faint warmth over the otherwise cold scene. Levin examined the office carefully, her eyes moving over each detail. Books arranged in perfect order, a framed diploma on the wall, a small plant that looked freshly watered. And then, the chair where Dr. Warren had been found sitting upright and lifeless, as if he had simply drifted away while in thought. But Levin wasn't interested only in the body or the room. She wanted to know who had come here last night. Someone had been with Dr. Warren. Someone whose voice had been captured faintly on the security audio. Someone who wasn't supposed to be here at all. She turned toward Nina. "You mentioned last night's final patient," Levin said. "Tell me everything you know about him." Nina swallowed hard. "His name was written as Daniel Price. Dr. Warren told me he had added a last-minute session. I didn't question it. He'd done that before." She paused, her eyebrows pulling together. But something felt strange. Dr. Warren usually sends emails or leaves me a message if he adds anyone outside of normal hours. Last night, he didn't. I only saw the name when I was locking up. "Did you meet this patient? Speak with him? See him in the lobby?" Levin asked. Nina shook her head slowly. "No. I left before the session started. I didn't see anyone. I didn't hear anything unusual either." Levin studied her expression carefully, searching for any sign of uncertainty or fear that might suggest she was withholding something. But Nina's emotion was pure confusion and grief. "Show me where the patient's information would normally be," Levin said. Nina led her to the small file room next to the reception desk. Metal cabinets lined the walls, each filled with carefully organized folders. Every patient had a file. Every file had a record. Levin flipped through the drawers until she reached where the newest clients would be stored. There was no Daniel Price. Maybe he was new, Levin suggested. Even new patients must fill out forms, Nina reminded her, sounding frustrated with herself for not questioning it sooner. Insurance, contact information, background, something. Levin continued searching. Nothing. No file. No intake form. No digital entry. The name did not exist anywhere in the clinic system. It was as if the man had walked in without a shadow. Levin leaned against the cabinet, thinking. "What about the writing on the calendar? You said his name looked different." Nina nodded. "Dr. Warren always writes in neat handwriting. That one was rushed. Shaky, even." "That's not like him." Levin asked. "Not at all," Nina said. "He was precise. Structured. Even when things were stressful." Levin felt something in her stomach twist. A man with no record. A name written unnaturally. A missing session file. A locked room. A scream that broke the silence at 10:14 p.m. She needed to see the footage for herself. Nina guided her to the security office, where Samuel replayed the previous night's recordings. Levin's eyes narrowed as she watched Dr. Warren arrive, teacup in hand, walking into the hallway with calm, steady steps. He unlocked his office and disappeared inside. For the next several hours, the hallway never changed. No shadows moved. No door opened. No human figure approached. At exactly 10:14 p.m., the audio captured a short, sharp scream. Dr. Warren's voice. Levin replayed it 3 times, noting the panic, the suddenness, the raw fear in it. "It doesn't make sense," Nina whispered from behind her. "He wouldn't scream unless something terrified him." Levin stayed at the frozen screen. She thought about the missing memory card, the strange sweet scent inside the office, the door locked from the inside. She thought about the second voice caught faintly before the scream. She couldn't make out the words, but it was low, tense, and unfamiliar. She returned to the office and began inspecting the bookshelf closely. Her fingers traced the spines of the books, feeling for signs of hidden compartments or tampering. She examined the window, which couldn't be opened more than a few inches and had a security latch. She checked the vents, too small for anyone to fit through. She checked the door lock, noting that the mechanism appeared untouched before Samuel forced it. There were no signs of break-in or escape. Yet someone had been here. Levin's instincts nagged at her, telling her that the answer wasn't in the room's physical features. It lay in the person Dr. Warren had met that night. Whoever Daniel Price was, or whoever he pretended to be, he had come with purpose. She started searching Dr. Warren's desk, going through drawers carefully. Most held typical items, pens, papers, therapy worksheets, appointment schedules. But in the bottom drawer, she found something that made her breath catch. A plain white envelope, sealed and labeled in handwriting that clearly belonged to Dr. Warren. "If something happens, read." She opened it slowly. The note inside was short but filled with uneasiness. "I know he is coming. I know what he wants. If this reaches you, I failed. He isn't a patient. He is an obsession. Someone I could not save. Levin felt a cold ripple run through her as she read the final line. He calls himself Daniel Price, but that is not his name. She looked up at Nina, who stared back in shock. What does that mean? Nina whispered. It means this wasn't therapy, Levin said quietly. It was a confrontation, one that Dr. Warren saw coming. She folded the note carefully, as if it were a fragile piece of evidence that might crumble in her hands. She placed it in an evidence bag, but her mind was already racing ahead. The killer had a connection to Dr. Warren, a deep, emotional history, someone who believed the therapist had failed him, and someone who was clever enough to disappear without leaving a trace. Levin walked out of the office, pausing at the threshold. She looked back at the quiet room where a brilliant therapist had died alone. She felt a heavy weight in her chest. This wasn't just a crime scene. It was a message. Someone had returned from Dr. Warren's past, and that someone wanted to be found, but only on his own terms. Detective Mara Levin drove back to the station with the sealed envelope in her jacket pocket, its weight feeling heavier than any piece of paper should. The words inside echoed through her mind as she walked through the precinct doors. She didn't waste time. She headed straight to a quiet corner desk, sat down, and opened her laptop to begin searching through Dr. Elias Warren's background. She expected to find a clean professional history. Instead, she found something that pulled her deeper into the mystery. Dr. Warren had been practicing for 22 years. His reputation was nearly spotless, with dozens of grateful testimonials from former patients praising his patience, warmth, and insight. He had helped people overcome trauma, addiction, grief, and fear. But as Levin scrolled through the earlier years of his career, she noticed a name that kept appearing. He had once worked closely with a troubled teenager named Adrian Cole. The boy had been only 15 when he became one of Dr. Warren's longest, most challenging cases. There were no details in the public records, but whatever had happened between them had been intense enough that Warren's notes were sealed under court protection. Sealed notes usually meant one of two things. Either the patient had been involved in a crime, or the therapist had been. Levin leaned back in her chair and rubbed her temples. The name Adrian Cole wasn't in the envelope Warren left behind. The note had only mentioned Daniel Price. Still, something told her that discovering who Adrian was would bring her closer to the truth. She requested access to archived court documents relating to the case. After some delays, she was brought an old, dust-covered box of files. Inside, she found transcripts that revealed a complicated history. Adrian had been born into a violent home. His father was abusive. His mother had left when he was 9. He bounced between schools, foster care placements, and juvenile detention centers. He had been unstable, unpredictable, and dangerously clever. Several incidents suggested he was manipulative, able to shift blame easily, pretending to be scared one moment and cold the next. Teachers described him as a boy who could imitate emotions so well that even adults felt guilty questioning him. When Adrian turned 15, he was assigned to Dr. Warren for mandatory therapy after an incident at school. The document didn't describe the incident. Instead, it referred to sealed pages and restricted information. But one line stood out. Patient exhibits signs of deep-seated rage and fixation. He may form unhealthy attachments to authority figures. Levin read that line twice. Fixation. Attachment. She thought about the missing memory card, the locked room, the scream. Someone had been in that office with Dr. Warren whom he feared enough to leave a note warning about. Someone with an obsession. She dug deeper into the records, searching for anything that linked Adrian Cole to the present. There were no adult records under that name. No employment files. No medical history. No social media. It was as though Adrian Cole had vanished at age 18. People didn't simply disappear. Not without help. Or purpose. Levin closed the file and stayed at the desk. Could Adrian have changed his name? Could Daniel Price be just another mask? The idea made her heart pound, because it suddenly aligned too perfectly. A fake name. A missing file. A therapist's fear of a man returning. Everything pointed to a single truth. Whoever had visited Dr. Warren wasn't a stranger. He was a ghost from Warren's past. Later that afternoon, Levin drove back to Crestwood Clinic. She needed to know if anyone else remembered Adrian Cole, or if Dr. Warren had ever mentioned him. Nina was seated at the reception desk, her face pale from exhaustion. She looked up when Levin entered. "Detective, did you find anything?" Nina asked. Maybe, Levin said, lowering her voice. I need to ask you something. Did Dr. Warren ever talk about a former patient named Adrian Cole? The name didn't ring any bells. Nina shook her head slowly. No, but he sometimes mentioned a difficult case from early in his career. He never said the name, just that it had changed him. Changed him how? Levin asked. Nina thought for a moment. He said the patient was unpredictable. Someone who could smile while he lied. Someone who made him question whether therapy could really help everyone. Levin's heart tightened. That description fit the file perfectly. Before she could ask more, Samuel appeared in the hallway, waving them over. Detective, you need to see this. They followed him to the security office. He pointed at the monitor showing the clinic's front entrance camera. The footage was from earlier in the day, before police had sealed the building. A man had stood outside the front doors at 6:32 a.m., before anyone arrived. He kept his face lowered beneath a hood, but his posture was strange. He stood perfectly still, facing the camera without moving for nearly a minute. Then he turned quietly and walked away. Something about the figure made Levin uneasy. He didn't fidget. He didn't look around. He just watched. And the stillness reminded her of something. Someone who had learned to mimic emotion, to copy behaviors, to blend in by standing out as little as possible. She leaned closer. Did he enter the building? No, Samuel said. He stayed outside. But he returned again just before you arrived. The footage showed him again. Same hood. Same still posture. Same silent stare into the camera. But this time, he raised his hand and pointed toward the lens slowly, deliberately, like he knew exactly who would be watching later. Then he walked away again. Nina stepped back in fear. What does that mean? Levin kept staring at the screen, her mind working through possibilities. The man wanted to be seen, but only in the way he chose. He wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. He was sending a message. And the message was simple. I'm still here. Later that evening, Levin returned to her office. She spread out all the files on her desk, forming a timeline. On one end was Adrian Cole at 15, angry and unstable. On the other end was the death of Dr. Warren. Everything between them was a blur. She needed to understand how Adrian's life had unfolded after therapy. Had he gotten better? Had he disappeared? Or had he spent years planning this moment? She reread the final lines of Warren's note. He is an obsession. Someone I could not save. Levin closed her eyes. Therapists were trained not to carry guilt for their patients' failures. Yet Warren clearly believed he had failed someone so deeply that he expected that person to return. Therapists rarely say things like that about ordinary patients. Levin tapped a pen against the table. If Adrian Cole had changed his identity, she needed to trace it. She sent out a request to state and federal databases to search for anyone with similar physical traits, similar age, or similar patterns of disappearance. She asked for records of name changes, witness protection entries, and missing person reports that might connect. The system began scanning. It would take hours. While she waited, she opened Warren's professional profile. A photo of him smiling at a conference filled the screen. Kind eyes. A calm face. A man who believed in healing. She wondered if those eyes ever saw danger coming, or if he had convinced himself he could fix Adrian long before he realized the boy he tried to save had grown into a man who couldn't be saved at all. Her computer dinged suddenly. The search results had returned one match. Just one. A man named Cole Adrianson, age 32. No address. No employment. No photo. Only a single record that he had legally changed his name 18 years ago before disappearing completely. A chill ran through Levin's entire body. The date of the name change was the same week Adrian Cole turned 18. Her heart pounded as she whispered to herself. He didn't disappear. He just became someone else. And now, that someone else had returned for the therapist who once tried to rebuild him. The past wasn't gone. It had walked right back into Dr. Warren's office, locked the door, and left with the truth. Detective Myra Ortega stood in the quiet hallway outside Dr. Adrian Holt's office long after the rest of the police team had left for the night. Something about the room still bothered her. The locked door, the missing audio, the strange shadow behind the frosted glass, and the name Helena, the mysterious last patient. Myra couldn't shake the feeling that every clue they had found so far was just surface level. The real story, The real person behind the therapist's death was still hidden in the dark like a whisper no one could quite hear. She stepped back inside the office. The lights buzzed softly, the same soft golden glow filling the space. But now, in the quiet, it felt colder. She stared at the leather armchair where Dr. Holt usually sat, the place where he had listened to hundreds of people confess their fears, secrets, and hopes. Next to it, the client's couch looked untouched, smooth and perfectly arranged. But when she leaned closer, she noticed a corner of the fabric slightly lifted. Something had been pressed underneath. She pulled it out carefully. A folded yellow sticky note. One sentence written in a shaky hand. She wants her story to stay buried. Myra exhaled slowly. The same handwriting as the last appointment entry. The same signature that had written Helena. But what story did Helena want buried? And why was Dr. Holt involved in it? The next morning, Myra visited the Holt family again. Adrian's wife, Lydia Holt, greeted her with tired, red-rimmed eyes. She looked as if she hadn't slept in days. Myra asked gently about Helena, about whether Lydia had ever heard the name before. At first, Lydia shook her head, then froze, as if a faint memory was tugging at her. She walked to a drawer in the living room, searching through piles of old photographs, letters, and holiday cards until she pulled out a small black and white picture. A young woman stood next to Adrian, both of them smiling politely at what seemed like a university event. The woman's name, written on the back, was Helena Ward. She was in Adrian's psychology class, Lydia explained in a quiet voice. He used to tutor her. She was brilliant, but troubled. I only met her once or twice. Then she vanished. Adrian said she dropped out of school. Myra thanked her, though her mind was already racing ahead. This Helena existed. She had a history with Adrian, and now her name was the last one written in his appointment book. But if Helena hadn't been around for years, why return now? And how? At the station, Myra ran Helena Ward through the system. The results tightened her breath. No current address. No work records. No medical or school updates. No banking. It was as if the woman had simply dissolved into the air 20 years ago. But there was one record, an old missing persons report filed by Helena's parents in 2005. The case had been closed due to lack of evidence and no signs of foul play. But she had never officially been found. If Helena was still alive, why had she contacted Adrian after all these years? And what did she want from him? Myra drove to the address listed on the old report, a small house on a quiet street. Helena's mother answered the door, an elderly woman with trembling hands and soft, sad eyes. Myra explained who she was and why she'd come. The woman invited her inside, her voice gentle but weighed down by years of grief. She spoke fondly of Helena, her intelligence, her love for literature, her strange fascination with shadow psychology. But her story shifted when Myra mentioned Adrian Holt. Helena's mother hesitated, then confessed that Helena had grown obsessed with Adrian during her final months in school. She believed he understood her more deeply than anyone, that he saw something inside her no one else could. But Adrian, trying to maintain professional boundaries, pushed her away. After that, Helena spiraled into paranoia. She spoke about voices that didn't belong to her and memories that weren't hers. Then one night, she disappeared, leaving a note saying she needed to return what wasn't meant for her. They never heard from her again. Myra felt a shiver twist through her. This wasn't just a troubled student. Helena had been unstable for years. Could she have returned to confront Adrian? Or had someone else used her identity to lure him? Before Myra left, Helena's mother mentioned one more thing. A month before Helena disappeared, she had started seeing Adrian privately, outside regular appointments. When Myra asked why, the mother whispered that Helena had said she owed Adrian a debt, something she couldn't forget or escape from. Myra left the house with more questions than answers. She drove straight to the university archives to access Adrian's old files. Deep within the dusty storage room, she found the box labeled Holt, A, Student Records. Most of it was routine, test scores, attendance sheets, evaluations. Then she found a sealed envelope marked confidential. Inside was a short letter written by Adrian himself. It revealed that Helena had confessed to witnessing something she shouldn't have seen, involving a patient Adrian had been treating off the books. A violent patient. Someone dangerous and manipulative. Adrian had been afraid Helena would expose the session recordings, and he had convinced her to keep the secret, promising to help her. The letter didn't say who the patient was, only that Adrian believed the man was capable of hurting someone if provoked. Myra's heart pounded as she realized the weight of the words. Adrian had protected someone, and Helena had been a witness. A hidden patient, someone not in the official logs. And if that person had resurfaced, they might have come back to silence the only two people who knew the truth. Back at the station, Myra requested any off-book or unusual clients Adrian had seen in the last 6 months. His assistant provided an old handwritten sheet Adrian used before logging appointments digitally. One name stood out, an alias, clearly fake, but recently used, Daniel Cross. Myra searched the name. Nothing. Then she checked Helena Ward's old case file, cross-referring the handwriting and signature. The looping curves, the spacing, the rhythm of the strokes, they matched. Someone had been writing under both names, and it wasn't Helena. The realization hit Myra like cold water. Someone had been pretending to be Helena. Someone who knew her handwriting. Someone who had access to old records. Someone who wanted to lure Adrian into a trap. The missing audio recording, the locked door, the stage struggle, it all pointed to the same possibility. The killer wasn't Helena. The killer was someone connected to the secret patient Adrian once protected. As Myra stared at the evidence board in front of her, a chilling thought rose. What if the hidden patient never left? What if he had been watching Adrian all these years, waiting for the right moment? And what if Adrian had known he would come back? On the far edge of the evidence board was the sticky note found under the couch. Myra picked it up again, reading the words slowly. She wants her story to stay buried. But now she saw what she had missed before. The word "she" had been written over something else, something faint beneath the ink. Myra held it under the light, tilting it until the original letter showed through. It wasn't "she" at all. It had originally said "he." He wants his story to stay buried. The killer had changed the pronoun on purpose, leading them astray. And Myra realized with a surge of fear that whoever had killed Adrian had planned everything, down to the smallest details, to make Helena appear responsible. But Helena had been gone for 20 years. Someone else had returned in her place, and they were still out there, watching. Detective Myra Ortega sat alone in her office long after everyone else had gone home. The city outside the window seemed unnaturally still, as if the world itself were holding its breath. The evidence board glowed under the dim fluorescent light, each photograph and note piecing together a story that was still incomplete. Dr. Adrian Holt's last moments, the mysterious final appointment, the locked door, the misleading clues, the vanished shadow, and now the truth she had uncovered. The killer had purposely rewritten history, changing Helena's name, altering the note, and pointing every clue toward a woman who hadn't been seen in 2 decades. Myra stared at the faint letters still visible under the sticky notes rewritten "she." The original word, "he," refused to leave her mind. Whoever the hidden patient was, he had known Adrian well enough to mimic Helena, manipulate evidence, and plan a killing that felt both personal and ritualistic. She studied Adrian's face in an old photograph clipped to the board. He looked confident, calm, the kind of man who carried people's secrets with a strange sense of duty. But in that same picture, Myra noticed something she hadn't before. His eyes, though peaceful, carried a subtle heaviness, as if he had been living with a secret that weighed more than his career could hold. The thought pushed her toward a new question. What if Adrian had never truly stopped treating the hidden patient? What if the last session wasn't with Helena or an imposter, but with the same unstable man from years ago, the one Adrian had tried to protect? Myra leaned back in her chair, rubbing her tired eyes. A faint sound came from her desk drawer, her phone vibrating against wood. A text message from an unknown number. 3 words that tightened her chest. "You're getting close." No signature. No number traceable. No explanation. Myra stood instantly, adrenaline burning through her exhaustion. The message wasn't a threat. It was an acknowledgement. Someone was watching her, and they wanted her to know it. She grabbed her coat and rushed out of the station, mind racing, heart pounding. If the killer was monitoring the investigation, then he knew she had discovered the truth about Helena, and he might act again. When she reached her car, she stopped. There, tucked under the windshield wiper, was a small black USB drive. No note, no envelope, just the drive, placed carefully, deliberately. Every instinct told her not to touch it, but she couldn't walk away. She picked it up, hand shaking slightly, and returned inside the station to plug it into a secure computer. The drive contained a single audio file. Adrian Holt's voice filled the speakers immediately, shaky, unlike his usual calm therapist tone. "This is my final session log," he said. Myra froze. It was a recording Adrian had made himself. She listened closely as he continued. "If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident. I've tried to contain him for years. I failed. I thought I could help him, control him, redirect him, but I should have known better. I thought burying the truth would protect everyone, but he found me again." Myra leaned forward, heart pounding. Adrian took a trembling breath on the recording. "He calls himself Daniel now, but that isn't his real name. I don't know what he calls himself in his own mind. I don't know if even he knows. The man I once treated was broken long before I met him. Two identities living in one body. One gentle, brilliant, terrified. The other violent, manipulative, and deeply obsessed with erasing anything that connects him to the past." Myra felt her blood run cold. Adrian hadn't been hiding a patient. He had been hiding a man with dissociative identity disorder, one identity capable of harming, the other desperate to dissipate. "I thought Helena could help him," Adrian continued, voice trembling. "She saw things in him I didn't see. She understood him in a way even I could not. He became fixated on her. When she threatened to expose the sessions, he turned on her. I tried to relocate him, tried to separate them, but the violent identity took over. I should have reported him. I should have protected her. But I thought I could save him." Myra forced herself to breathe. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the desk as Adrian's voice grew heavier, more defeated. "If he's listening, I know what he wants. He wants to erase Helena completely. He wants to bury every trace of her existence. And he knows I'm the last one alive who remembers what truly happened." Myra's heart sank as the next words echoed through the speakers. "If he comes to my office, I won't lock him out. I won't fight him. I owe Helena that much. If I die, let the world know it wasn't her fault." A long pause filled the room. Then Adrian whispered the final words. "His hey." The audio cut off. Myra sat in stunned silence for nearly a full minute, unable to move, unable to breathe. Adrian had known he was going to die. He had let it happen. He had willingly faced the hidden patient, believing his own death would finally expose the truth about Helena's disappearance. But the recording still left a crucial question unanswered. Who was this man? Was he alive? Was he pretending to be different people? Myra played the recording again, listening for background noise. But there was nothing. Just Adrian's trembling breath and the weight of decades of secrets. She closed her eyes. There was one place left to check. One place that might reveal the missing identity. Adrian's private storage unit. She had avoided it earlier because the key had been missing. But now she understood why. The killer had taken it, and he had returned the key by dropping the USB drive with its attached ring under her windshield. A challenge. Or an invitation. Either way, she had to go. The storage facility was on the outskirts of town, surrounded by quiet industrial buildings. The evening was unusually still, the kind of silence that made every sound feel louder than it should. Myra walked down the long row of units until she reached number 47, the number Adrian had scribbled in his old appointment book. She inserted the key. It turned smoothly. The door slid open with a low metallic groan. The unit was small but neatly arranged. Boxes labeled Holt Archives, old therapy tapes, documents, journals. But what caught Myra's eye immediately was a large corkboard at the back wall, covered with photographs, news clippings, and handwritten notes. In the center hung two pictures side by side, Helena Ward, and a man she didn't recognize. Tall, sharp features, a slight scar above his eyebrow. On the bottom of the photo, a name was written, Ethan Ward. Helena had a brother, and she hadn't vanished alone. Myra scanned the documents pinned around the photo. Hospital records, therapy notes, Adrian's handwritten entries detailing Ethan's psychological condition. Ethan suffered from identity fragmentation. Helena had been helping Adrian treat her brother, but as Ethan grew more unstable, he began switching identities unpredictably. One identity adored Helena. The other wanted her gone. The story clicked together painfully, piece by piece. Ethan had killed Helena during a dissociative episode, then fled. Adrian had discovered the truth but kept it buried, trying to treat Ethan secretly for years. When Ethan resurfaced, he used Helena's name to lure Adrian into a trap, and then he killed the only person who knew both his faces. As Myra turned to leave, her flashlight flickered across the far corner of the unit. A man stood there, half hidden in shadow, as quiet as if he had grown out of the darkness itself. Tall, sharp features, a faint scar above his eyebrow. Ethan Ward smiled softly, almost sadly. "I knew you'd find the truth, detective," he said in a calm, gentle voice. The voice of the harmless identity. Then his expression shifted, eyes narrowing as a different voice followed. "And now you know too much." Myra reached for her gun, but Ethan stepped back into the shadow, vanishing behind a stack of boxes. By the time she rounded the corner, he was gone. The unit door still open, the cold night swallowing every sound. Ethan was out there. The hidden patient was free again, and the final session was far from over.